In recent days, Mr. Oot had not been in good spirits. He remained troubled by the incident in which a thief stole a coop full of young chickens. What struck him as particularly strange was that the chicken coop had been placed right next to the room where he and his bedridden younger brother slept. And yet the chickens were gone, taken without a sound, as if nothing had happened. There had been no noise, no clucking, no signs of struggle. Even Lou, the usually alert dog, had not barked once. The more he thought about it, the more frustrated he became. Was it his misfortune to have built a house in a location cursed for raising livestock? For several years now, he had not had any chicken to eat during the 3 days of the Tet holiday. It had been a long time since the passing of his parents, who had left behind a brother barely clinging to life, that he had last tasted meat. Sometimes foxes would enter and consume all the chickens, leaving behind only bloodied feathers scattered throughout the coop. A few tufts stained with blood would even be dragged up to the floor beside his and his brother's bed by the cunning animals. At other times, thieves would sneak into the house while he was out working in the fields and steal the chickens. That brother of his was completely useless. All he did was roll his eyes and grin with his crooked mouth, never uttering a single word. If he had been able to speak, perhaps the sound of a human voice might have scared off the foxes. Moreover, he was unable to walk. Had he been able to recognize the sound of footsteps, perhaps they could have prevented the theft. And this time, it had even happened in broad daylight. Still, it seemed unfair to place all the blame on him. If there was anything to blame, perhaps it was fate itself for bringing into the world such an incomplete being. And even if he could be considered a person with arms and legs, they were essentially useless, as he could neither use them to feed himself, nor take care of basic personal needs. A Western-educated doctor, an old acquaintance of the village chief, had once commented on his brother's condition. He mentioned something about brain degeneration or a form of paralysis, but Mr. Oot could not fully understand. He had been born into a tenant farming family, as had his parents and grandparents. How could he possibly comprehend the complexities described by men of learning and science? After some calm thinking, Mr. Oot hurried into the house to grab his machete and went to split bamboo. The land belonging to the landlord, Master Ska, had plenty of bamboo, but tenant farmers like Mr. Oot could only ask for the core to use temporarily. The bamboo sheath was usually split and woven into mats for storing rice, or made into baskets, sieves, or fishing poles. The wealthy who owned land could use bamboo as a versatile commodity, but the poor like him could only ask for the bamboo core to weave mats or walls. His house walls were made entirely of woven bamboo. In sturdier spots, he laid a single layer. In weaker areas, 2 or 3 layers were added to block the wind and rain. With skillful hands, Uncle Oot gently split a stalk of bamboo into pieces. Using the tip of his machete, he separated the top end into fine, thin strips. Then he bent the bamboo to soften it and started slicing it into many narrow slivers to weave into the unfinished mat. Once done, Uncle Ut laid the mat over a bamboo frame he had prepared days before. Using small slats and strings, he began to tie them together. By the time the sun had tilted westward, he had finished a rectangular door with one vertical support longer than the other by about 2 hand spans. Just like that, he had a door to fit into the house without having to waste money on hinges from the market. The long pole would go into a hollowed bamboo piece driven deep into the ground. The top end was tied with coconut fiber, and there he had a makeshift spinning door that could open and close. The other day, because the house had no back door, the dog Lou sneaked in and ate half a pound of his meat. Poor him. He seemed cursed when it came to meat. A neighbor from the next village, knowing he'd been robbed and had years of failed livestock raising, gave him half a pound of meat out of sympathy. And yet that damn dog, bold as ever, gobbled it all up. But strangely, Lou had never been so rude before. It could hunt mice, catch lizards, but never once had it touched food left on the shelf. Who knows what kind of courage it found to act like that? Ever since Bay, his younger brother, grew a little older, the lonely house in the remote marshland had seen fewer visitors. The neighborhood kids didn't like to visit, afraid to encounter someone so pitiful yet terrifying. And truthfully, their fear of Bay was justified. His pale, sickly face always wore a twisted grin. His wide, white eyes stared at everyone with an unspeakable hunger. No one could tell who he was really looking at, since the whites of his eyes dominated and his tiny pupils darted around endlessly. His mouth was also strange, sometimes crooked, sometimes slack-jawed, with a long, red tongue that lolled out grotesquely whenever he smiled at someone. The local children whispered among themselves, "His tongue's so long!" It's hard to believe it's even human. Of course, all these things were whispered discreetly, for fear Uncle Ut would hear and be hurt. But the more people whispered, the more the words traveled. Uncle Ut happened to overhear once, but he didn't react. He understood their fear. After all, he loved Bay dearly, but even he sometimes felt unsettled when he looked at him. People are born with a fate. Uncle Ut often said so when talking about having to care for a disabled brother, someone shunned by the whole village. Bay had a miserable fate, and Uncle Ut, well, his fate was to carry a blood bond he could not abandon. Meat was scarce. The main food at home was fish from the fields. In some ways, this reassured Uncle Ut. There was no shortage of fish. Just a few dozen, hastily set lines could provide a meal. But B was a picky eater. Though born into a tenant's household, he acted like he lived with the wealthy. He would eat just a few grains of rice. Basic fish and sauce could not satisfy him. One day, in a rush, Uncle stewed some fish quickly and left it unfinished. He set aside a bowl of fish for B before heading out. When he returned, he found the fish had not been fully cooked. It still reeked of that raw fishy smell, yet B had eaten it all. Seeing his brother's eyes, Uncle Ut was stunned. The boy seemed to relish the mushy, soft texture. Uncle Ut usually cooked fish well, but never to B's liking. He barely ate yet grew quickly. The only odd thing was that he never walked like normal people. The bigger he grew, the more he reeked. A faint poultry stench seemed to cling to him. Yet they had no chickens or ducks. None survived long with the menace of wild foxes and cunning thieves. Neighbors constantly complained of lost poultry without knowing why. Uncle Ut noticed too. Once chickens and ducks from nearby houses would wander over, but year after year they stopped coming. Then they disappeared completely. Was it the foxes getting bolder, or the thieves getting smarter? No one knew. Disaster seemed to strike everyone, but the whispers grew more disturbing. Old folks and children alike murmured that there was a ghost in Uncle Ut's garden, a ghost that fed on raw flesh so no chicken or duck could survive there. Mr. Ut paid no mind to idle gossip. He would leave for the fields at dawn and return only after nightfall. Each morning, he hastily cooked rice and divided it into 2 portions, one to take with him and one for his disabled younger brother. This left only the evenings for him to relax, sipping tea or nursing a few small cups of rice wine before collapsing into sleep, waiting for the next sunrise. Though the sleep of a farmer is deep and heavy, the rats in the house had recently become bolder, more unruly. In his half-sleep, Mr. Ut would hear them rummaging through the pots and pans, grating on his nerves. Come morning, the snakehead fish he had dried for a single sun's day would be gone without a trace. These were not ordinary rats, more like ghosts or demons. They never touched dried fish, only raw. Over time, the loss became too much to ignore. Mr. Ut tried staying up to catch a glimpse of the intruders. As if they could sense his intent, the rats became silent and invisible, as though they never existed. Yet the moment he nodded off from exhaustion, they would wreak havoc again. On nights when the moon shone through the cracks of the bamboo walls, faintly illuminating the house, Mr. Ut would sometimes see a red ribbon fluttering through the room. That ghostly, elusive ribbon would disappear the moment he opened his eyes. It happened many times, but he always brushed it off as a dream, a figment of a tired mind. One day, the neighbors held a memorial feast, and Mr. Ut was invited. He drank a bit too much and stumbled home, collapsing onto the broad, 1.6-meter wide bed he shared with his brother. Around midnight, he was roused by a tickling on his cheek, something soft and damp like wet silk caressing his face. Still drunk and drowsy, he thought it was the dog, Lou, licking his face. But when he opened his eyes, he saw that same red ribbon, floating and dancing around playfully. He tried to grab it, but his hand would not obey. Such is the state of drunken limbs half asleep. At the sound of movement, the ribbon vanished, as if pulled into the shadows close by, near where his brother lay silently watching him. Mr. Oot stared at the boy, confused. Why was he not asleep? Why were his eyes wide open, staring so intently? And why were they glowing, green at first, but then shimmering like two burning red marbles? Terrified, Mr. Oot shouted, "What are you doing, Bee?" The yell startled Bee, whose expression abruptly shifted. The eerie glow in his eyes vanished. His mouth drooped back to its usual slack. But something was different. There was a look of regret on his face, like a child disappointed by the loss of a game. Something is not right, Mr. Oot thought, sleepless until the rooster crowed. There is something wrong with Bee, like he came from a place darker than any man could know. The next day, after transplanting rice, Mr. Broyle Ut visited his cousin, old Mr. Tam, in the neighboring village. The two had been close since childhood. "Brother Tam, I am worried sick," Mr. Oot began. "Bee, he is changing. I do not know if I can handle it anymore." Mr. Tam looked at his younger cousin with sympathy and concern. He had heard stories, strange ones, about the boy, but he did not know where to start. "I know it has been hard for you," he said after a pause. "But what can we do? He is still your blood." Mr. Ut then told his brother everything, the strange events, the red ribbon, the noises at night. Mr. Tam listened in silence before finally advising, "If you want to understand, you have to see it with your own eyes. I have heard terrifying things about the boy, but I was not sure what to believe. If you're always out in the fields, how can you know what is happening at home? You have to spy on him without him knowing." Then Mr. Tam brought out a bound chicken and handed it to him. "You look pale. Take this and make some green bean porridge. It is the least I can do." On the way home, dark clouds rolled in. A storm broke out, thunder, lightning, and heavy rain. The path became slick, the sky a strobe of fire. When he reached home, Mr. locked the chicken away and rushed to the fields, worried the seedlings would wash away. But just 10 steps from the paddies, he remembered Mr. Tam's warning and turned back. "I need to know what Bee does when I am gone." Back at the house, the back door loomed through the rain and flashes of lightning. Oddly, the dog Lou did not greet him. As he approached the chicken coop, he heard frantic clucking. "Damn those foxes again!" He grabbed a stick and pushed open the creaky door, then froze. There it was, the red ribbon, glowing blood red under the lightning. It darted away at the sound of the door, vanishing in an instant. Inside the coop, all that remained was a bloody clump of feathers. Rushing to Bee's bedside, he found the boy asleep, though a trace of blood clung to his lips. It was not a fox, he thought, horrified. The red ribbon killed the chicken, but why is Bee's mouth stained with blood? After that night, he noticed more strange happenings. Ordinary folk might be bitten by leeches in the fields, but their wounds would dry up in a day or two. Mr. Oot's wounds festered, oozing yellow pus and taking weeks to heal, sometimes more. He shook the thought away. It was too bizarre, but he had to find out the truth. Come January, with the fields dry and the harvest done, villagers turned to trapping birds and rats. Mr. Oot caught a haul of birds and roasted them, but Bee refused to eat. The boy had grown thin, painfully so. Looking at him stirred pity, though fear also lingered. One evening, a neighbor gifted him a slab of pork. He tossed it on a bamboo rack above the kitchen hearth and left to set his fishing lines. But halfway through the garden, he turned back, haunted again by the red ribbon. He had oiled the creaky hinges with soft clay, so the door opened silently. Inside the dim kitchen, the ribbon was dancing again, as if delighted. It did not notice him creeping closer. The stars shone through holes in the roof, spotlighting the scene below. Mr. Oot squinted, finally seeing it clearly. The thing that had haunted his nights, killed his chickens, kept him meatless for 5 long years. And suddenly his blood ran cold. It was not a ribbon at all. It was a tongue, a long, slick tongue with tiny papilla twitching on its surface. The tongue flicked and licked at the raw pork. Then it vanished, only to return seconds later. The motion repeated, punctuated by the wet smacking sound of a child enjoying a feast. A human tongue? Impossible. No tongue is that long, he thought. But it was real. It was eating the meat, and each lick made the meat vanish before his eyes. Panic surged as he groped blindly in the dark, searching for anything to defend himself. His hand touched the warm ashes from the fire he had used earlier. No weapons, just hot cinders. And Bee was still inside. With no choice, he lunged and grabbed the monstrous tongue. Slippery and slimy, it thrashed with frightening strength. He was flung into the ashes but held tight, thinking quickly. Grabbing a handful of hot ash, he tightened his grip. From the bedroom came Bee's muffled cries and the eerie, broken howling of Lou. But Mr. Oot did not let go. He had it! He had it! The quivering tongue yanked him through the house into the bedroom. Bee thrashed on the bed, moaning and muttering. Then, under the starlight filtering through the rotting thatch, Mr. Oot saw Bee's face and screamed. It was not his brother anymore. From the bedroom came Bee's muffled cries and the eerie, broken howling of Lou. But Mr. Oot didn't let go. He had it! He had it! The quivering tongue yanked him through the house into the bedroom. Bee thrashed on the bed, moaning and muttering. Then, under the starlight filtering through the rotting thatch, Mr. Oot saw Bee's face and screamed. It wasn't his brother anymore. It was a demon, its grotesque tongue wrapped around his neck. The slimy appendage writhed, probing his face. Driven by pure terror, Mr. Oot grabbed the machete near the bed and swung. Gongs and alarm bells shattered the silence of the night. Villagers rushed toward the blaze that lit up the quiet countryside. When they arrived, Mr. Oot's house was already consumed. They tried to extinguish the fire with palm fronds, but found only broken crockery and the charred blade of a machete. No one ever knew what truly happened to the two brothers. Some said they perished in the fire. Others whispered darker things. Only one man stayed silent, Mr. Tam from the next village. Not because he didn't know, but because some things are better left unsaid. After all, if he hadn't kept his silence, this terrifying tale would never have been told.